Hey guys, Tyler 2K here, and today I want to talk about one of Lydia's strongest attacks, back 1. While playing as Lydia, you'll find that her tracking is not the best, and unfortunately, her back 4 leaves a lot to be desired. Now outside of her homing attack, she must commit to certain options to stop movement to one side or the other. But Lydia really doesn't have a universal tool other than down back 2. So while messing around, trying to get a feel for Lydia and learning her best moves, I discovered a really interesting property on her back 1. So for people who may not know, Lydia back 1-2 is her 11 frame Punisher. But because back 1 is more of a hook punch, it's actually active for 2 frames, as she swings her arm from left to right. What that means is if the opponent is to her left, it actually hits on frame 11 and is +4 on hit. But if the opponent's to her right, it tends to hit on frame 12 and is instead a +5 on hit. Right about now, before people get a little bit too crazy about what I'm not saying that back 1 is actually a homing attack. What you'll find is that back 1 can typically be stepped at roughly even frames, and dependent on the size of the character, the window that they can step it becomes highly variable. While experimenting in player matches, I had found that back 1, for some reason, depending on the amount of negative frames, would actually become a tracking move. So rather than approaching the problem of countering step as a more proactive issue, became more of a reactionary/retroactive one. Bringing this information into training mode, I had decided, let's go ahead and start with the top stepping characters first, because the other characters probably will fit a pattern that they cannot step it consistently regardless. Because realistically, there's 50-something characters, then going ahead and testing it 4 times each character would bring it over 200 times you'd have to test it. And come on, who has time for that? So yeah, here's the 200 plus trials that you can see for yourself. And now that we know that it's good at negative frames, let's go ahead and find out the actual frame data for each character. So running another roughly 1,000 trials, I was able to hone in and find the precise data for which at negative frames and positive frames, back 1 will be an option. And here you go. You can find this information in the description, a link to the actual spreadsheet, but let me go and give you a rundown of how this data actually works. And let's show that by using Eddie as an example. If Eddie is at -1 or worse, he cannot step back 1. And also, if he's at +2 or better, he cannot step back 1. So there's a 2-frame window where he can actually step back 1. This testing also led to a couple of interesting findings. Namely, Gigas, Jack, and Marduk cannot step back 1, most likely due to their size and height. While I also found out that Negan's sidestep is actually worse than his sidewalk. And lastly, no surprise here, but Lily and Alyssa have the best sidestep and sidewalk, and they fundamentally break an option like back 1. So while -7 is written, it is super inconsistent, and honestly, I would never suggest back 1 to be used other than as a punish against them. So the major takeaway with this information is if you, as Lydia, are at +3 or better, there's almost no chance that your opponent will be able to sidestep back 1. This also means that back 1 into another back 1 will actually track both directions. Also, I do understand that there will be some naysayers to this technique, but please check for yourself, feel free to test my data, and find out exactly how correct it is.